The Schumer letter comes just ahead of a vote in the House of Representatives this Wednesday, where two articles of impeachment, essentially the charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, are expected to pass the Democratic-controlled House, formally moving the process to the next step, which will be the trial of the president in the Republican-controlled Senate. Republican and Democrats are expected to meet soon to discuss the framework of the trial. The Schumer letter spells out a proposed timeline that could see the trial begin with housekeeping procedures as early as January 6th, but most notably calls for testimony from White House Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, Senior Advisor to Mulvaney Robert Blair, former National Security Advisor of John Bolton, and Associate Director for National Security in the Office of Management and Budget Michael Duffy.
Do any of my Republican colleagues think this phone call reflects a president pursuing the national interest, or was he pursuing his own political ambitions? Every Republican, every one of them, needs to answer this question. The president is directly involved here. It's pretty clear what has happened, and I think this, as bad as the other stuff was, this is even worse.
You are going to do a fantastic job.
Democrats are particularly interested in hearing from Bolton after this testimony during the impeachment investigation, in which his concern about White House dealings with Ukraine were confirmed.
You tell Eisenberg, Ambassador Bolton told me, that I am not part of this whatever drug deal that Mulvaney and Sondland are cooking up.
While it was the acting chief of staff who admitted on camera that there was in fact a quid pro quo with Ukraine.
You just described as a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happens as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy.
The White House has held firm in rejecting all subpoenas for documents or witnesses from the House of Representatives, and it's not clear what route the Senate will take in airing the facts of the case.
The two articles of impeachment are pretty weak. I hear that in the House, the only thing bipartisan may be the opposition to the two articles of impeachment. Nevertheless, we will have an impeachment trial, as I've said repeatedly. It will become the business of the Senate after the first of the year. Senators will all be in their chairs, including those running for president. And I'm sure they're really going to be happy to be there instead of out in Iowa and New Hampshire. And the other thing you'd be interested to note, if you haven't picked it up, is that senators are not allowed to speak. This will be good therapy for a number of them.
It requires just 51 senators, a simple majority, to determine whether witnesses will be called or not. The impeachment inquiry to date has convinced no Republicans to support Democrats in the vote on Wednesday, with the GOP remaining completely unified in opposition to what will only be the third impeachment of a president in the country's history. And despite efforts from Democrats in the Senate, some vocal Republican senators like Lindsey Graham have already indicated that this is unlikely to change when the articles of impeachment reach them in the upper chamber. Shervin Bryce, please, SABC News, New York.